Alright, so let's take a look at this question here as well. So we want to find a fourth degree polynomial whose zeros are -2, 5, and -2 plus or minus square root of 2i. Alright, so let's break this down. That means that we're saying that x equals -2. We're also saying x equals 5, and then x equals -2 plus, I'm just going to rewrite this as I rad 2. Just switching that around. And we also get here x equals -2 minus I rad 2. Okay. I don't know why this software is bugging out a little bit today, so I hope you can bear with me. So if we had x equals -2, that must have meant this came from x plus 2. And the x equals 5, if we set that again equals 0, I should say, equals 0. This came from x minus 5 equals 0. Similarly, this came from x, and then if I brought the 2 over, plus 2, and then brought the over minus I rad 2, that would equal 0. And the last one here, this would be x, again, add the 2 over, plus 2, and then add the I rad 2 over, plus I rad 2 equals 0. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to take all these and we're going to multiply them out. So the first thing here, I would do the x plus 2 times x minus 5. And over here, I'm also going to do the x plus 2 minus I rad 2 times x plus 2 plus I rad 2. Alright, so this is very easy to do out. If we expand this one out on the left-hand side here, we're going to get x squared minus 5x plus 2x and then minus 10. So that becomes x squared minus 3x minus 10. And then if we do this out, well, you can kind of see the conjugate here. We have x plus 2 minus I rad 2 and x plus 2 plus I rad 2. So I kind of want you to think of like x plus 2's grouped together. Because now we can, when we're distributing this out, or as some people like to call it, FOIL, we don't have to do the outer and inner terms because they're just going to reduce down to 0. So let's start with our first term here, x plus 2 times x plus 2. We can write this as x plus 2 squared. Then if we would normally do the outers and the inners, but those will cancel out here down to 0. So we just have to do the last. So minus I rad 2 times positive I rad 2 will be minus I squared. And then rad 2 times rad 2 is just 2 times 2. Alright, so we're going to simplify that a little bit more here. X plus 2 squared, first thing we should do is expand that. So we get x plus 2 times x plus 2. And then I squared is -1. So this is also like minus -1 times 2. So in this case here, we're going to get x squared plus 2x plus 2x is plus 4x plus 4. And then this part over here, minus -1 becomes a positive 1 times 2 is positive 2. Alright, so we're going to continue on here. So let me bring this down. So again, simplifying this, we just get x squared plus 4x plus 6. And now we're going to take that part and multiply it with our x squared minus 3x minus 10. And of course, all this still equals 0. So now we're going to go ahead and expand this out. So this will be pretty much the last thing we need to do here. Multiply all our terms. So I'm just going to go across here. X squared times x squared, x to the 4th, x squared times 4x plus 4x to the 3rd, x squared times 6 plus 6x squared. Then we do our next minus 3x to the third. Then we have minus 12x squared. Then the negative 3 times the 6 minus 18x. And I'm going to start a new line here, minus 10x squared, minus 40x, and lastly minus 60. So last step now, we just have to combine our like terms together. So we'll end up with x to the fourth. Then we have a 4x to the third, and we should have another one here. Did I do something? Negative 3x times x squared. That should have been negative 3x to the third here. Sorry about that. So 4x to the third minus 3x to the third is going to be 1x to the third, or just x to the third. Alright, then we have a 6x squared minus 12x squared. So that's going to be negative 6x squared. So we get negative 6x squared, but then we also have the minus 10x squared, so it becomes negative 16x squared. Then we have a negative 18x and a minus 40x. That becomes minus 58x. And then lastly here we have minus 60 equals 0. So there would be your 4-degree polynomial here. Find the 4 through zeros. So actually we can just change this to y, because it's asking for the zeros. So if you wanted the zeros, you would just set it equal to 0. But the equation, since that's what it's asking us for, would be y equals. All right. So I hope that helps here. Your final answer is x to the fourth plus x to the third minus 16x squared minus 58x minus 60.